It was so funny because I was in Canada for the first part of the Olympics, and it's wild to be at a place where, like, those are the Olympics. Like, I call them the whiter Olympics because that's exactly what they are, and that's exactly what they intended to be.
Thank you all for coming at lunchtime to hang out and talk sports. Bomani, thanks for doing this.
I appreciate you.
I don't think we've ever met.
Not till like 5 minutes ago.
I wish. I spent years at NPR trying to get sports on the air at Morning Edition. I feel like we should have called you many, many times.
Well, that raises the question as to why you did not.
It's a good question. It's actually one that we're trying to answer with our new show, Sports in America, because I think there are a lot of people like me in the public radio space who love sports, and we feel like we're not allowed to talk about it. But now we are talking about it, and we're getting on public radio stations around America to talk about sports. And so I'm glad we're connected.
No, I appreciate it. I'm glad to be here.
I wanted to start before we get to the World Cup. I'm wondering if you'd indulge me and help me work through a weird dream I had that involved sports a few days ago. I had this dream that the U.S. men's and women's hockey teams won gold in the Winter Olympics, and it was all this incredible fanfare. It was just this magical moment, and my dream went to the locker room, and somehow the director of the FBI showed up and was pounding beer in the locker room, which, I mean, couldn't be true. Like slamming beer, and then he, like, mid-drinking, brings out his cell phone, and he connected to Donald Trump, like just literally connected to Trump on the line. And then Trump gets on there and he starts talking to the men's hockey team to congratulate them. And he tells this like disgusting joke. He says, like, I want you to come to the State of the Union. I want you to come to the White House. But I kind of have to invite the women too. The women's team who had won the gold medal. This feels too crazy to be real.
I think the funniest part is that you thought that was a joke. I think that is literally what he meant. It's just like, hey, okay, just letting you guys know, I have to invite women. This was not something that he had thought about. I would not even bet money that he knew that there was a women's team until sometime maybe the day before. We're like, yo, we won gold. He's like, I thought the game wasn't until tomorrow. Oh, yeah, okay, but they won gold. Like, I'm not positive he knew the difference. I don't know. I have been a bit surprised by the surprise of the reaction. Now, I would argue that all things Kash Patel and the idea that that man is the head of the FBI. Like, I've never seen it set up where somebody could take, like, a picture of every FBI director from Hoover on down and just show them, and the next thing you know, it's that guy. Right? Like, which would just raise a question. Something has changed somewhere between here and here. I wonder what's going on. Like, that is the one thing that is not like the other. And he lives this crazy life. Like, I was in Vegas, I guess it was last month for work. And, I'm at a table because, that's why they put it in Vegas. And he was explaining to me, and maybe I misunderstood him, but he was like, yeah, Kash Patel's here. He's in the high, the high limit room or something. And I went over there and he wasn't there, right? So maybe he meant that he had been there at some other time. But apparently he just lives life on tour and just goes and kicks at all these places. So the idea that he's in Milan for the Olympics, I think that decision was made. Like, he's got a Google alert on every cool event that there could possibly be. And so then from there, if they were just speaking generally and they were like, hey, the FBI director said he wants to come back here, I personally, raise a different way, I would find that to be spooky and ask more questions. Them, hell yeah, let them come on, right? Okay, cool. So then he gets in there, and then you realize very quickly that this is his room. Like, these are the guys that he wants to hang out with, and they are not nearly as mortified by the idea that dude with that look on his face is the head of the FBI. That doesn't strike them at all. And he's like, yeah, I'm going to call Trump. They're like, hell yeah, let's call Trump. And so calling Trump doesn't seem crazy on its own face because it's the president, and this is kind of the sort of thing where the president pops up, or, President Reagan's on the phone to talk to you in the locker room or something like that. Like back in the era where there would just be a phone in the locker room that rang and people picked it up and then you passed it to whoever. Like, that used to be a thing. So none of that really is crazy. Like, all those people being in the same place makes sense. It's just that it's at the Olympics that feels like a little bit weird. But in sum total, that's a collection of people that I don't think would love anything more than to hang out with each other in an occasion like that one.
I mean, except for Kash Patel looking like he showed up at his son's fraternity and like for a party. But yeah, no, you're right. It's not that weird to have the Olympic winning, gold medal hockey team getting a call from the president. Yeah. I guess I want to ask you, like, because I couldn't tell if it was Trump just being honest, like you said, and saying the thing, or if he comes into sporting moments like this and calculates a way to be involved and take over the narrative. That's where my mind goes, like which of it.
He seems, though, to very particularly pick his spots in places where he believes that it is his room, right? Like a NASCAR race, that's his room. He's going to show up there. He's made some misjudgments. I guess that was an NFL game that he showed up to do, I forget who the oath was for, to swear some people in and got booed mercilessly. But he looks at that like, oh, that's his room. SEC football games, like he's going to turn up at LSU, Alabama. He feels like that's his room. He's not pulling up to the All-Star game for the NBA. That's not his room. At least from what I can tell, I don't think this is even that particular to sports as much as he's just trying to show up anywhere where people are happy to see him, or where he believes that people are going to be happy to see him. And those are the types of sporting events that he goes to. I don't know what inclinations he has or has not received about the way hockey players feel about him, but I get the feeling that whenever the hockey players are invited to come to the White House, there's no discussion about whether or not they're going to go. They're going to go. If they had invited Team Canada probably would have went, right?
Although people like Jake Gensel, former Pittsburgh Penguin, who I deeply respect, like he decided not to go to the State of the Union.
Right, but as I say, but we're talking about an individual here,
right,
as opposed to with these other sports where it's like, yeah, the Golden State Warriors are not coming.
Right.
Like he knows hockey's his room.
Yeah.
And he loves to show up in his room.
The Golden State Warriors will not be at the White House.
Yeah.
But I want to kind of get to the position that these athletes were in that locker room, because I have replayed this. I've talked to my wife about it over and over again. Like he makes this comment, he makes it sound like, oh, he's being forced to bring the women's team. The women's team, by the way, that has been more successful than the men's team. They just won Olympic gold, and I mean that's a whole separate thing. He makes this joke, and there's laughter in the room. One thing my wife said to me was like, you as a dude do not know how that lands if you're a woman. I just want to like say that out loud. But I've gone through these different versions of this where it's like I would have loved for one or several of those guys to have like stood up in some heroic way and said, Mr. President, that's not funny. But
you thought that was going to happen in that room?
No, that's what I'm saying. But it wasn't going to happen in that room for the reasons you're talking about. Also, these guys had just played like 3+ hours of hockey. Like what? There's been outrage over this. Like people have been saying those guys they're sexist. They should have stood up to the president.
They probably are. That's on the board. Men sexist on the board. Always on the board. I also think that there is. I always use this phrase about like there are two Americas, right? And two Americas can mean anything. Like when I bring it up, people typically think I'm talking about race. I'm normally not. Like I like to leave it a little bit ambiguous. But there are all kinds of like splits that come up. And a big split, this is two Americas, but it's like the two Americas XY chromosome edition. And there's two kinds of people, and there are those of us who went to school with girls and those of us who went to school with nothing but boys. And those who went to school with nothing but boys, I worked for a while with somebody who's got an operation full of those dudes, and they never graduate beyond the sophomoric sense of humor that they had when they were teenagers. Like nothing makes dudes act more mature faster than the fact that you're trying not to embarrass yourself around some girls who happen to be there. And you think in your life about the people you know who retain the most like ridiculous sense of humor as men, and ask yourself very kindly, did this dude go to school with all boys? And I mean, this is a hypothesis I have not scientifically tested, but I think it checks out. And hockey in particular is a world of dudes who spent all their time around a bunch of dudes. It's primarily Canadians, and the system of that is you harvest these boys very young and you send them off in the middle of damn nowhere to Saskatchewan or Manitoba or somewhere else, and you move in with these families, and all you do is just hang out with these boys playing hockey all the time. My understanding is there's a new show on streaming right now that kind of taps into these themes in a slightly different direction.
Which had us in such a moment of inclusivity in hockey. It felt like
see, that's the thing. Hockey,
it wasn't. It made it feel that way.
No. Hockey more inclusive than you think in a way that they don't want to talk about. But that's who that room is right there. There's nothing like I remember once a buddy of mine was doing a radio interview with a hockey player. And I forget what he was talking about exactly, but he said something about, and then maybe your wives could come on the trip. And the dude just matter-of-factly, that nobody else could hear him, was like, oh, no, we don't want that. And he wasn't joking. Like, he was dead-ass serious in the way that happens when you spend way too much time around nothing but dudes. So I understand the desire to give these guys the benefit of the doubt because people want to like them, especially in that particular situation. But no, I just think that was the room. I just think they were both like, ha, 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 you're right. Like, I don't know if hockey is like basketball, where the men who play basketball have a serious and profound respect for female basketball players. They do not look at them as doing a job that is different than the ones that they do. They are the ones that will turn up and watch their games again and have actual expert conversations with you about women's basketball. I don't get the feeling that hockey is trafficking the same way about those things. I could be totally wrong. Like, I'm offering a great deal of hypothesis because it's not like I be hanging out with these cats. But the world that I live in, a lot of this stuff all comes together, and I feel like I'm making sense right now. Maybe somebody out here don't think so, but I think I'm making a lot of sense.
You're making a lot of sense. I think it's actually challenging a lot of my notions around this. Like, I had this fantasy that it's too much to put on those guys to have assumed that one of them should have like stood up to the president.
Okay, so I would agree with that, right? If the expectation is that one of these dudes is going to be like, hey, everybody stop laughing, Mr. President, that is beneath our standards, right?
And I do think that's what some people wanted. Like, some people wish...
I don't blame them for wanting it.
Right.
Expecting it is stupid. Wanting it is human, right? Like, I get that. You wish that the world was a better place than it actually was. It's not going to happen. Now, what I think you would like, even if you weren't getting that, was everybody to for a moment realize that other people are going to be able to see you and then immediately be like, ooh, hey, I don't think I'm going to participate in that joke. Like, look, in those moments where somebody says something that's wildly inappropriate there, I think it's split between two things. It's wildly inappropriate and you can't believe that they said that. Then there's also the other one, wildly inappropriate, and you also think it was kind of funny. Both of those, the move you typically make if you know people are watching is you hold it up and then you stop. Those cats, no, that was just something somebody was saying in that world and they just rode along with it. I think what I find interesting about the whole scene, and it's kind of a thing about the Olympics where, for me at least, I don't get particularly jingoistic about the Olympics. I enjoy watching it. I find it to be interesting. But, it's not, I don't care about hockey like that on a regular basis. So I'm not going to care about hockey just because the United States Olympic team has happened to win, right? Like, that doesn't work that way with me. However, hockey at the Olympics is a very interesting dynamic for American sports fans, generally speaking. And what it is it is a sport that as a nation we are familiar with, even though we are not necessarily the biggest fans, but we all understand kind of what hockey is. It's not like curling where every 4 years somebody got to explain to you what it is, right?
I was kind of getting into curling for the first time, I still don't understand it.
It happens to everybody, man. It was so funny because I was in Canada for the first part of the Olympics, and it's wild to be at a place where, like, those are the Olympics. Like, I call them the Whiter Olympics because that's exactly what they are, and that's exactly what they intended to be. Whole goddamn run up. I forget we're on public radio, but it's a whole.
We're not here. You're good.
Yeah. No. But
we are, but we're not.
This is the thing to keep in mind about the Olympics, the Winter Olympics, and we don't talk about this, I don't think, nearly enough. It is entirely a Northern Hemisphere sport thing, right? Like, it is Olympics for a somewhat particular subset of people that also leads to fun stuff like there's a Winter Olympics team from Zimbabwe, and it's basically the pure descendants of Cecil Rhodes who figured out, hey, man, we ain't got a lot of competition down here to try to make the skiing team or whatever it is. But look, the Winter Olympics comes around, and hockey is there. We all know what hockey is, but America is not a favorite. Hockey is the only of the team sports that we care about in this country that was not invented in this country and that is not, by and large, dominated by this country. So this is the first time America's won the gold medal in hockey in 46 years, but nobody's been complaining about the fact that it's been 46 years since we won this. If America does well in a hockey competition, everybody's kind of cool with it. If not, they go on about their business. And so it's a game against Canada. You know, they not so cool with us right now, but by and large, we cool with them. They good neighbors. They don't make a lot of noise up there. You know, they talk a little bit funny, but it's whatever, right? And so it goes, you get like a legitimately, exceptionally fun match or game. They call them games. You get this the year before, you had the Four Nations thing with the NHL, and it was really competitive. And it's like high stakes hockey is really fun to watch. Overtime hockey with 3-on-3 is really fun to watch, right? You get to put all these things together, and then America wins. And everybody gets to go like, yay, America, yay, America. But the people who really enjoy the yay, America part are the ones who don't look around and realize it's the whiter Olympics for a reason. The only people saying, yeah, America is a bunch of white people, right? And so you get this room of everybody happy and everybody being brought together, and none of them are saying the quiet part out loud. It's just like, damn, man, it's really just us. But it kind of feels good to us right now. And hey, I understand that. There's lots of stuff I want to do with no white people around. I get it. But I know it when I do it. I'm being honest about the fact. And so this gets to be something that gets people so charged up. There's no football to talk about, so the sports coverage can go there. Regular season NBA basketball is not something that we really talk about right now. I don't know what it takes for that to break through. And so it becomes this happy moment for everybody to be happy. And then you are reminded what happens when you get a room that's got a few too many dudes in it. And then it goes off the rails. And then Trump shows up. And it's the reminder to the more liberal-leaning people who want to participate in the Hacksaw Jim Duggan USA stuff, right? You feel a little bit left out because the people that's normally there, you know who it is that got the bald eagle sticker on their car and everything else. You ain't trying to hang out with them, but right now, you ain't even got to think about it. We just out here being USA, USA. There is no left, there is no right, there's just red, white, and blue. And then Trump pops up, and you're like, damn, you just had to go off and say something, didn't you? Yeah, that's how it goes. And so I have laughed at the kind of liberal recoil at what is probably, for that particular subset of people, a median set of opinions, right? Like those gentlemen in that room are not outliers. The president did not get there through sheer force, right? And you just broke your heart a little bit. Like there are all kinds of people, and I see this happen on the left, where when they have their moment to be like in an everyman moment, they really revel in it and they love it because everybody wants to love home, right? Everybody wants to love the crib. And, you know, white people do not want to feel ostracized from the median white person, no matter what. Even if white people don't think about themselves as like this collective that coalesces together. And I think this is perfectly reasonable, by the way, right? You see what happens with black people as soon as somebody thinks that they're trampling in Uncle Tom territory. Hey, wait a minute now. Nobody wants to be disliked by their own, and our society denotes our own in this particular way. And I think that is largely what happened with the hockey situation. And then you just had to be reminded, nah, that's their room. That's how their room gets down.
But it's so because I think one of the reasons that you can't get away from the intersection of sports and politics is because sports reflect a lot of who we are in so many ways, and many of the things you're talking about. I think about this moment, it's like we had been in this phase with the popularity of heated rivalry and this warm feeling of, oh, maybe there's a day when the NHL, you know, is more inclusive. And then suddenly this happens, and I think the hopeful, aspirational part of me is thinking back to like, oh, there have been these moments where I've, you know, laughed nervously at something where I wish I would have stood up to someone. I learned a lesson from that. And are these guys in that locker room going to all go home and come home from the Olympics and think about that moment and maybe learn a lesson? What you're saying to me is like, we just have to confront the fact that if you are someone who thinks that this was going to be some warm, beautiful learning moment, you don't understand sort of the realities of our country and our society.
Yeah, no. They wasn't going to be that, right? They wasn't going to learn while they was drinking. You know, like that's typically not how it goes. But I think there's an important distinction to make because I think that you put two things together that aren't the same. And that is where heated rivalry comes into this. My hypothesis has always been on the idea of, and it's not gay people in professional sports. It is gay men in men's sports. The WNBA, for example, we are very aware of the broad continuum of sexuality. I'm terrible with these terms, but you know what I mean. We know what's going on over there. It's just what it is, right? You know what I mean? But it's not a closet situation. Like I remember when Brittany Griner left Baylor and she came out, and my question was, out of what? Like, oh, okay. Like, so now we can all talk about it. Got it. Like, but you weren't fooling me, right? There are plenty of gay men who play football, basketball, and what heated rivalry is showing people is that there are plenty of gay men who play hockey, or at the very least, men who have sex with other men, however you want to classify that or whatever it is. We're the ones that are surprised about this from the outside. Those dudes who get naked around each other, they know. They know who's gay. They know who's not. I could give you a story of an NFL Hall of Famer who brings his boyfriend around. Like it's well known. They're the ones who don't say anything about it. They're the ones who understand and traffic with each other in spite of that fact. The inclusiveness that the leagues are worried about, I do not believe is among the players. Even though, I mean, there are obviously some players who think some radical things about this, right? No, they're worried about us. They're worried about the general population. They're worried about the people that might boo or might call these guys names or anything like that. But I am of the belief that in actual day-to-day application, those guys are much better equipped and ready to handle the idea of gay men in their locker rooms and everything else than those of us on the outside, because they've been doing it, right? Like I remember I went to graduate school with this dude, and he was gay, and he would periodically, if he felt comfortable with somebody, that he would tell them that he was gay. But I always said that if he came and told me that he was gay, I was going to confess to him because I was black, because it was that abundantly clear and obvious. You know, like there are that, like, if you when you're around people that much as you are in a graduate program, when you're there every day, man, you're not, there's not a lot of mystery left to be there. It's us that can't, that find this to be like a counterintuitive idea that it would be a gay hockey player. We're the ones that don't get that. The hockey players see it all the time. Now, might those people be okay with it in a locker room and then go vote for something that is completely antithetical to what they do on a daily basis? That's on the board. But in terms of the actual inclusivity, they're doing it and they're keeping it quiet and they're being cool about it. We're the ones that probably need to grow up a little bit.
I want to ask you what lessons or observations should we take from this hockey locker room moment as we get ready for the World Cup, when I have an inkling that President Trump is going to try and be involved? I mean, the U.S. is hosting it. You've got a young, hungry U.S. team that, you know, no one thinks they're going to win, but I mean, there are a lot of expectations on them that if they don't make it out of group or something, I mean, the soccer itself is important and they have to perform. But in this political moment in our country, in this world, like those guys on that team watching what happened to the hockey players who represented the United States, won gold, and then kind of had the moment spoiled by politics. Like what are you thinking about if you're on that team?
Well, I think it's a different set of things. One, if I had to guess, they will make it out of the group. Historically, the home nation tends to get out.
That's what I'm saying. If they don't, things are dark.
Yeah, so that's a very interesting thing. We are just happy with whatever we get from hockey. We have expectations about this soccer team that are completely unfounded based on the historical result. But you know, it's cool if we get good at hockey. People in this country think we should be better at soccer and want to be better at soccer. I don't think so. I think the question becomes, like, if they get out of the round, is there a call from Trump for that? Probably not. Right?
I don't think so.
Nah. I mean,
I think he's be calling after every match.
No. I don't think that's enough winning.
Right.
For Trump, right? Like if they get all the way to places that none of us think they're going to get, maybe that's a little bit different. I don't think that's where they're going to get called into the politics thing. The difference I don't know if to say the difference. Leading up to the Olympics in Milan, Italy called game recognized game and was like, hey, man, leave ice at the crib, right? Like in a country like Italy, what ice is feels very, very familiar to them, and they wanted no parts of that, right? And, the U.S. was explaining that, they typically send all these people for law enforcement, all these trips or whatever, but Italy was very clear that they didn't want no parts of ice in their country, right? I mean, and it's funny because it's not like ICE has any authority over there. Like, I don't know what they were going to do, but they were like, no, we don't want no ICE over here. The United States does not have the luxury of saying that ICE can't pull up. And what everybody's concern going into these is about ICE, which is not exactly discerning in their snatching people off the street movement. There is no telling what might happen. There's no telling what the level of scale of protest or everything else is going to be. And the soccer team is comprised of different demographics than the hockey team is going to be, is comprised of. That to me is where the politics are going to come up, because the current state of affairs in the United States is going to be on display for the entire world. Like, this is a country right now that other countries tell their people, I don't know if it's safe for you to travel there, largely because you might get mixed up with whatever ICE has got going on. It's going to be 48 countries between here, Mexico, which has its own fun set of things going right now, and then Canada. The politics, I think, are going to come up when the media that covers soccer, which is a bit more liberal than the media that covers hockey, when they start getting in these dudes' faces and asking them questions about the current state of affairs. I don't know nearly as much about the guys that are on the soccer team, like who is inclined to say what about what thing or whatever it is. But that to me is where the politics of it all is going to come up. And it's also going to come up with these cats from other countries who are going to come over here and have something to say about, what they see before them.
Should we in the media be asking players on the U.S. team, on other teams who are coming, about politics?
Yeah, they're adults. They don't want to answer. They don't have to. And the decision not to answer, I don't fully judge. Like, everybody's got a lot going on, right? And your decision on what you do and do not wish to speak on without knowing the people often is not, I don't think, appropriate for me to offer that measure of judgment. But if what you're working on or the story that you're doing involves talking about politics, or you want to get an understanding of what people think and feel as of now, right? People will write books about this in 50 years, and those are the details that wind up in those books. Is like, hey, we talked to these guys. What were the players thinking at this point in time? I've got all these documents that I've harvested, right? And all these interviews that I've gone through, and I know how the country felt. I know how the politicians felt. I know how the people running this felt, but I don't have the voice of the players. Their voices are important. And so, yeah, nobody there is like poor, broke, and struggling in doing that. Well, I guess, let me be careful about that, because different countries, the world is, it's a different situation. But they're in a position to decide whether they do or do not want to answer a question. They can do that.
Is sports diplomacy, when we hear that term, is that a real thing? Like, does a World Cup have an opportunity to sort of help us not just forget, but confront some of the tensions in our world by reminding us that there is a sport that so many people around the world can get behind and have spent their lives thinking about being a fan of, trying to play? Is that a real thing?
Well, I would argue that confronting the tensions requires exploring the root of said tensions. And sports does not put us in a position to confront the tensions. It just perhaps puts us in a position to recognize that those tensions are silly. But in terms of confronting it, we did something, I did a show for HBO. We did something on like the idea of sports washing. And I actually, to a degree, reject the idea of sports washing. I accept it in the sense that I think for these countries, the ability to pull off events, it demonstrates a certain stability to your economy. And so I think it's very good for encouraging foreign direct investment. But ain't no comedy show gonna change what I think is going on in Saudi Arabia, right? But what it can do for rich people is to say that it is acceptable. Because what they want in Saudi Arabia is they got all that money and they don't get to have none of the fun rich people have. Right? Like they want to be the kind of rich people everybody else is, right? They want to have cool shit in their neighborhood, because that's what happens when you're rich. You get the good, you get the good stuff to come to you. That's what they want. But it's not changing anybody's mind. China's hosted the Olympics, twice in the last 20 years. It hasn't changed anybody's mind. Having the World Cup, the World Cup is not going to change anybody's mind, I don't think, about like what we think the state of the United States is. In fact, it's going to provide people an opportunity to come be mad about it and be heard. And so I think in terms of the idea of sports and diplomacy, it's a very similar sort of thing. People play these games all the time. They're always confronted with, people from different worlds or everything coming together in order to do this. They have the opportunity every day to recognize how stupid all this other stuff is. And every day we vote stupid. We just keep going back to stupid. We know better and we still do it.
You grew up in Atlanta and Houston?
I grew up in Houston. Yeah, I was born in Atlanta and I grew up in Houston.
Can I hear a little bit about your mom? She's kind of a legendary activist, right?
Yeah. What's so funny about this is because the stuff with my mom is more documented. Like, I'm at that point now where I'm kind of like Denzel Washington's son, where I got to be, hey, don't forget about my daddy, too. But my mother's name, well, her name now is Barbara Jones. She was born Barbara Posey. She is from Oklahoma City. And in her teenage years, there was a sit-in movement that started in Oklahoma City, and my mother was I think the leader is the term to use. I'm not really sure. I've honestly had to glean a lot of this in my adulthood because she never really talked that much about it. But the long of the short is my mother and her friends integrated Oklahoma City, more or less. The store is called Katz. It's in the era of the department store having a lunch counter that you came in to eat at. And so my mother, it was a group of children. I think she was 15 when this happens. And they went into Katz on the first day. No one would serve them. On the second day, no one would serve them. And people, throwing soda at them and all this other stuff. And on the third day, they finally broke down and served them. And that meant that for Katz, all of their stores would then be integrated. And then that basically led to the integration of the city. And what is important to note about this is the most famous sit-ins and normally charged up as being the first are from Greensboro in 1960. And I believe the year on what I'm describing to you is 1958. She graduates from high school in 1960 and goes to the University of Oklahoma. I don't remember which number black student she was at Oklahoma, but I think we're still on one hand. And they took the party to Norman and did the same thing there and began to integrate that town also. What is interesting about that to me is my father so my father graduated high school in 1954. He goes off for 4 years to France. He comes back, and somewhere in 1960, he's a student at Southern University, and they had a sit-in movement there in Baton Rouge that wound up with him being put out of school. I think it was at a bus depot was what they were looking to integrate there at the time. The two of them meet at the University of Illinois in 1963. They got married in 64, but they meet in 1963. And I always imagine this, knowing my father. Like my father's a real one, right? I think that is the best way that I could put it. My mother is very composed and deliberate, but my father was much more of a rabble-rouser. And I can only imagine how he viewed himself. He'd been getting arrested in these protests and getting kicked out of school and everything else. And he's also older than her by about 6.5 years. And I can imagine he met her and he's getting ready to rattle off all his bona fides about revolution. And she's like, yeah, I was doing that when I was 15, big dog. What you think about that? And so this last year, 2025, I hate that I missed it because she misunderstood what a big deal it was, but they built a monument in Oklahoma City, to the sit-inners. So now there is every sit-inner has their own statue, basically, of the, sitting at the lunch counter. She was there. Interestingly enough, Donda West, mother of Kanye, also participates. So if you listen to Kanye talking about at the tender age of 6, she was arrested in the sit-ins. Those are the sit-ins. Like, these are the literal sit-ins. Sam Presti, the general manager of the Thunder, also had a big role in that, but they put that there. And so what's wild to me about my parents as I run through all of that for you is I've had to read that more than they have told me. I don't even do the full math on it. OU gave her an honorary degree in 2024. So we went there. It's very interesting to see your mother on one page and the next page is Toby Keith. But that was what it was. Slightly different people with slightly different interests. But that's what it was. But yeah, no, that is from which I have come.
Awesome. I could talk to you for hours longer, but I know we got to stop. But Bomani, thank you.
No, thank you.
Really appreciate it. This is
no problem.
This is fun. And thank you all.